Okay.
Hello, today, Danny's hi-fi equipment. Fasten your seatbelts. Really great equipment. At first, Danny gives us a quick overview with his iPad. After the overview, we talk a little more in depth. So now, Danny, your turn.
Thank you, Michael. Hey, what's up, everybody? So it's been requested many, many times over, and Michael probably texts me 2 or 3 times a week. You gotta show the equipment. You gotta show the equipment, dude. So here we are. So this is the big Kuzma XL DC turntable with, as you can see, 3 arms. Fantastic turntable made in Slovenia in Europe, part of the former Yugoslavia. And Franz Kuzma is a brilliant guy. Next to it, we have the brand new Meitner ESQ1 optical phono cartridge decoder. So this is for the DS audio cartridge right here that you see on the airline arm. It's an optical cartridge, so it does not use magnets like an MC or MM to generate the audio signal. It uses the movement of the stylus. It is not a digital cartridge. It uses the movement of the stylus to convert it into optical energy, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then it gets decoded in the analog domain, of course, by the EM Labs Ed Meitner designed optical cartridge decoder. Underneath, we see the Einstein, part 1 of the Einstein, the big phono. Also have an Einstein CD player. And we have the Thorens 124 in an Oswald Mills audio plinth with a Thomas Schick arm. And then there's another Kuzma there, but that's just obviously sitting there. And then we have one of the great turntables of our time, I think, the Technix Sl-1000r. So this is obviously the new incarnation of the famous SL line of turntables. They had the SP10 Mark 1, Mark 2, and 3. And so this is the Sl-1000r. And then underneath, we've got, obviously, the first thing you're probably going to look at is the Reeboks cassette deck, which I have owned since new. I bought this in 1994. And like everything else that, Germany makes generally, it works just like it did the day that I got it. So fantastic cassette player. The Einstein preamplifier, obviously. This is the Einstein power supply. There's an older Einstein phono stage right here, the circular thing that you see. Oldie but goldie, still works brilliantly. And then we have the Meitner MA3 digital analog converter that I use to stream music, et cetera, et cetera. So there you have it. Let's talk in detail. My prop.
Oh, Danny, thank you for the first round look in depth of your at least a part of your hi-fi equipment. But Danny, what's that small tower next to the right record player? You haven't talked about that one.
So, look, like all things in audio, by the way, I have like my prop Starbucks coffee for the morning because it's 8 o'clock here in California. Anyway, so I didn't believe it first. Kind of like so many things in high-end audio these days, a lot of snake oil discussions and conversations, and hey, this is phony, this is nonsense, whatever, trivial. This, however, actually really works. So it's a vinyl ionizer made by a company called DS Audio, the same that makes the optical cartridge we saw earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the premise of it is the records are charged with current, right? they build up electricity over time. I mean, you've seen it. You take the record out of the sleeve, you hear the popping and ticking. As you take it out, it's electrically charged, right? And so the ionizer basically ionizes the record as it plays with these photodiodes that are built into here. And as it's playing, it's removing that electrical energy.
You know,
it really works. There's actually a video that they shot where they sit with a, I believe it's a voltmeter or some kind of a measuring device that measures the charged electricity of something. And you can totally see when it's playing, it goes to zero.
Okay, but I think it all must be also good for your hair, because my wife has a hair dryer who does the same.
Yes, yes, I use it every morning. It works fantastic. So yeah, dual action.
Great, but great. You know, there is no frontier when it comes to stuff you can do for your vinyl, and I'm also one of those guys. At least try it. Sometimes you are surprised about the effect. I agree.
Yes.
In a way, but let me ask you something for the whole thing we saw.
Yes.
In my opinion, it is an extremely complex build. How do you manage the system without having too much of a downside? Let me put it that way. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Great question. I get it asked all the time. Other than, are you crazy? Are you insane? Why do you have all this? The second biggest most asked question is exactly that. Actually, so a couple of things to keep in mind. One, you know, I started as a reviewer. I still am a reviewer 20 years ago with a magazine called Positive Feedback. And, you know, all of this really is, you know, a friend of mine calls it the lab. All of this, look, I have a tremendous passion for music and music playback. And so, you know, people have their car collections, you know, women have their Hermes, you know, handbag collections.
Shoes, don't forget shoes.
You know, what's that?
I said, don't forget shoes. Very important.
Shoes, yes, of course. The shoes, that's the most important part for a lady, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, everybody has their thing that, you know, they get into. And it kind of comes down to, you know, I guess I got down the rabbit hole that, you know, I really enjoy listening to this equipment because each component brings out the music in a slightly different flavor. And so, yes, to someone who, you know, it doesn't care about music, doesn't care about records, listens to music in the background, like, you know, 99% of people do these days, unfortunately. Yeah, this is insanity, right? I mean, I totally get it. But when I have a chance, you know, I do music parties. Well, I used to do music parties up until COVID came out. So I would invite people over and we'd spend an afternoon and evening listening to music, record after record. And after that, you know, people, they start to understand. They're like, hey, wow, you know, I actually heard, you know, this Technix sounds markedly different from this vintage Thorens 124 that was built in 1961, right? So this was built, you know, this is what I got this about 2 years ago, I think. And this is from 1961. You know, both spin records, obviously, but they both sound very different. So anyway, to answer your question, actually the setup is pretty simple. I have the Einstein preamplifier, which is the heart of the system, so to speak, obviously. And from there, I have these two phono stages connected at all times.
Okay.
The EM Labs, DSEQ1, and the Einstein phono stage. And so what I can do easily, quickly, is on the back, and this is the reason why it sits like this, I can easily take the interconnects off and connect any one of the arms that I want to in a minute. And the same thing for the Einstein phono stage.
Great.
So it looks crazy, but there's a rhyme and a reason behind why it's set up the way it's set up.
Yeah, it all makes sense in a way if you explain it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And do you work with dedicated mono and stereo cartridges? You do that?
I do. Great question. So these are all stereo cartridges that I have here.
Yeah.
I've got a wonderful, my really beloved Dynavector XV1 on the Technix.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Zoo audio modified Denon 103 on the Thorens. I have the W2 DS Audio optical cartridge on the Kuzma Airline. I have a Transfiguration Proteus on the Kuzma arm, and I have a Lyra Etna on the Thales arm from Switzerland.
Okay.
The mono cartridge is in the other system. But guess what? We're not going to talk about the other system today, are we? That's going to wait until next time. Because there's two systems here. See, that's how crazy I get. When I get into something, you know, my old boss, he always used to tell me, if you're not in it to win it, why bother trying? And so I've always taken that approach. No matter what I do, I try to do the best that I can, right? And so, you know, obviously I've been, you know, incredibly fortunate to be, you know, in the place and time that, you know, obviously has afforded me the ability to get into music at this level and really enjoy it, you know. And again, I think it kind of gets into the larger question, which is, you know, are you an audiophile? Are you a music lover? You know, are you a high-end guy? You know, obviously all this stuff in the traditional sense is high-end, right? But it's hard to explain really, Michael. I mean, you know it, right? I mean, look, you've been, you know, how did we meet?
A lot of our viewers know what you are talking about, because if you are getting into this, it's all about the preferences. And if you go there, you go there, and you don't stop at a certain point usually. And
yes,
that's our hobby. Those are our shoes in a way. that's the way the things goes. But you know, as it not right now, I am very much into room acoustics nowadays until this is solved. But the next thing that will come up on my alley will be mono, and maybe you can explain a little more. Just a mono cartridge isn't all. You have what do we need else to have real mono, to get the best out of a good mono recording? Is there more than the cartridge, or how does it work?
Great question. You're saving yourself a lot of money because you can throw half your system out the window because it's mono, right? Just kidding. So, you know, mono, so it's a great question that you asked. I personally got into mono about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. A friend of mine who's one of my curators for my record collection that I also buy records from, he's a big mono guy. And he was like, you know, you got to try this mono thing. It's really, really amazing. I was like, you know, stereo. I mean, I kind of want to hear the effect, and you know, I really want to get submersed in the music. And you know, this is another thing. I mean, again, we can talk about this for hours on end. You know, a properly set up 2-channel system gives you the illusion of a 3D sound in space.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. You don't need
100%.
You don't need 5.1. It's absolutely
no.
With a really good stereo system, you can create an absolute 3-dimensional soundstage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly right. And so mono, this is the interesting part about mono philosophically. Mono does actually the same thing. The difference is you don't get the width and you don't get that panoramic, you know, cinemascope sound.
Exactly.
But you get layers and layers and layers of depth.
Yeah.
right? And there's really what I've discovered is there's really two ways to go about with a mono setup. One is because, first of all, fundamentally, a mono cartridge does not track the sidewalls of the groove in the record, right? It only tracks the depth and height, right?
Right.
So the vertical undulations of the groove, not the horizontal information. And so the traditional way, the old school way, let's call it that mono cartridges were made is that they're true mono cartridges. Lyra has, and others, Dynavector, I believe the XV1 mono also uses the same method, is it takes a stereo circuit and basically keeps the signal in mono with a mono stylus, but gives you the stereo. How do I explain this properly? It gives you the output.
Yeah.
And what I've run into, and probably viewers have if you dabbled around this, for some reason, and I don't know the technical reason why, no one's explained it to me succinctly. There is a chance that if you run a true mono cartridge, unless you have a dedicated mono phono amplifier, you're going to have tremendous issues with hum. And so my first mono cartridge was a what is it called? Miyajima Labs 01, I believe, or 0 or whatever it was. And that is a true mono cartridge designed from tip to end in mono fashion. However, while it sounded, you could hear the mid-range glorious and just the layers and layers of depth and stuff. The one thing I could never get rid of the hum.
Okay.
And so I tried everything I could.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get rid of it, or I couldn't get rid of it. And so I ended up getting a Lyra mono cartridge that basically eliminates the problem altogether. And I'm sure some viewers obviously know a lot more about this than I do. Please feel free to comment below. And so I get the mono sound, but without the hum. There's one thing I can't stand about analog. It's hum.
Of course.
I can't stand it.
Yeah. Sure.
So that's my thing with mono. So and again,
also, it's a huge topic. I think mono stereo.
It is.
It is. But what for me isn't already clear. This machine on top of the Einstein Phono preamp. Can you go a little more into detail with this one, because I haven't understood it fully.
Yes. So I'm going to switch views.
Sure.
So optical cartridges, again, kind of go back to the overall high-end audio thing. Most of everything that you see in high-end audio isn't really new, right? It's been around forever and a half. And I mean, if you look at most valve or tube amplifiers, those circuits go back to the 1920s and 30s, most of them, right? Optical cartridges came out in Japan, of course. I believe it was either the late 60s or early 70s. And I think it was either Onkyo or JVC that kind of came out with the first optical cartridge. And the basic premise is this. On a traditional moving coil or moving magnet cartridge, you would have either a coil or a magnet that generates, that takes the vibrations from the stylus and converts it into electrical energy, and then obviously into your phono preamplifier that amplifies that energy into a higher level signal, obviously, and sends it on to your preamp, to your amp and your speakers. And that's how you get your phono record output, right? An optical cartridge does the same thing, except it does it optically. And so it is not digital. It uses a cantilever just like any other cartridge, with a stylus, of course. And you got, Shibata stylus and a boron cantilever and a diamond cantilever. As you go up and down the range of DS audio, they start at actually a very reasonable $2,700 for their entry-level system, which is incredible. And it goes up to, I think, 60 or 65,000 here in the US anyway, with their top-of-the-line system.
Okay.
And so what the optical cartridge does, it works similarly like a mouse on your computer.
Okay.
It reads and converts the motion via optical sensors and diodes into electrical energy that's then amplified by the decoder and sent on to your preamp and amp and speakers and stuff, right?
Okay.
And so there's obviously inherent advantages to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
What is, when you listen to it, can you point out a big difference, a big advantage, maybe?
Two things right off the bat: silence, no hum.
Okay.
Complete silence, explosive dynamics, and resolution that simply, again, hyperbole, I get it. Ion audio, I get it. But I'm not kidding you. You sit here in the sweet spot, and every one of your records, you're going to play again and again, and you're going to be like, wow, I never heard this. I never heard that. I never heard this. Oh, there was a symbol there. Oh, look, there is an effect over here.
Okay.
I'm not kidding you.
Okay.
It's, and look, one of the reasons that both you and I love Einstein is because of, Volker is a drummer and a guitarist. And, when I first met him, almost 20 years ago, he always said, music has to have punch, it has to have kick, it has to have drive, right? Because, that's what it sounds like in real life, right? And Einstein equipment, in my opinion, brings that out incredibly well, right? But this takes it to a whole new level as far as phono playback goes. And so it is pretty incredible. And of course, keep in mind, when the Japanese came out with this in the 1970s, we still had carbureted cars. There was no such thing as an iPhone. The internet was a pipe dream, et cetera, et cetera. So technology was, infinitely less developed than where it is today.
Yeah.
And so the photodiodes and the sensors and the electrical circuits and all the ancillary stuff that you need to get this to work today in 2020, 2021 is obviously at a much, much higher level. And the first optical cartridges, I guess they didn't go anywhere. Well, why? Because they really didn't sound all that great, right? It's kind of like the early CD players, right? And today the technology is at such a refined level that, in combination with Ed Meitner's design of the DSEQ1 phono the optical cartridge decoder or amplifier, whatever you want to call it, and that DS audio cartridge, there is something happening that is, it's like magic.
Okay, but Danny, one second. What you described, I can imagine in a way, but usually these advantages comes with a price, and it's just a guess. My feeling is that you may, never have heard it, but that you may lose a little bit of the analog touch in a way, or not at all.
No, not at all.
Okay.
At least not at all, because it's all analog,
Okay.
There is nothing digital. There is nothing.
Okay.
The mechanics of the playback are identical
Okay.
to an MC and MM cartridge,
Okay.
right?
Interesting.
I mean, it's funny. I guess. Okay, now that I think of the question or your comment, in a way, how do I explain it? In a way, because it's silent, the first thing you notice, and by the way, as you know, the Einstein phono equipment is extremely silent.
Yeah.
This takes it to a new level of silence.
Okay.
And so out of the silence, the first thing you're like, wait, are you playing a record?
Yeah, I have the same effect. Maybe what you say remembers me on the first time when I put on an SRX from Music Matters on the new vinyl with.
There you go. Yes.
Oh my God, am I streaming again?
Yes. There you go. Perfect example. Yes, that's a good analogy. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's actually a good analogy, Michael. You're obviously still listening to analog. You're still listening to a record. Yes, there's still clicks and pops. Yes, there's still noise. Yes, if you have a shitty record, guess what? It's gonna be just as shitty on this setup as it is on any other setup.
Even more
right?
shitty.
Even more shitty. That's right, because of the enhanced resolution, right? I mean, there's shitty, and then there's super shitty, and then there is extra super shitty. So, let's just be clear about that.
Right.
What people, the two things that people ask. So I've had this set up for about a month now.
Mm-hmm.
And the two questions that I get asked the most when I share that I have this is, is it digital? How does it convert it to analog?
Yeah. And
the second one, believe it or not, I remember there is a Japanese, here we go, the Japanese again. There's a Japanese record player that uses a laser to trace the grooves, right? The laser player or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
None of this has anything to do with any of those two things. Okay. It is not digital, and it does not use any kind of lasers. Okay. It uses photodiodes and LEDs in the cartridge. And I mean, obviously, as you can imagine, it's incredibly tiny stuff, right? I mean, the cartridge body is more or less the same size as any other cartridge. The weight is more or less the same as any other cartridge, right? So it has to fit into that form factor. And so the miniaturization of the technology has obviously progressed tremendously. It's pretty cool. I have to say, look, you know why it's cool for me? Look, as you know, I work in technology, and at heart, I'm a geek, a hardware, tech geek, right? I love, my all my toys that I have, in some way or another, they're technologically connected, right? And so what fascinates me about this is that it is, for the first time in a long time that I can remember, that someone took a problem in high-end audio, looked at it from a completely different angle, sure, borrowed from previous developments. Like I said, none, 95% of high-end audio is all old stuff, right? Probably, just rehashed, reworked, new technologies, et cetera. And so it's the same thing with this. But nonetheless, as opposed to all the other manufacturers out there that are looking to continuously refine and refine and refine an MC cartridge or a phono amp, these guys said, hey, let's do this totally different. And so I think that's what excites me about it, is that, someone looked at it with a fresh, clean sheet of paper and said, hey, let's leverage the technology we have available today, and let's create something different and something new under apostrophes, right?
Great stuff.
And
great stuff.
It really is. It really is. I mean, I can tell you. So this setup right here, the EM Labs DSEQ1 retails for $12,500 US.
Mhm.
The W2 cartridge, I believe, is $4,500 in the US.
Mm.
And the entry level cartridge is $2,750.
Mhm.
Comes with a preamp.
Mhm.
And I tell you right now, I'll say it on record.
Mhm.
I challenge anyone to find an MC cartridge and phono amp
Yeah.
for $2,700.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Yeah.
That's going to sound as good
Okay.
as the entry level DS Audio cartridge.
One final other question, Danny. With your whole equipment over there, how do you decide which configuration I take now? Do you decide it by record, by music, or by mood, or by weekday, or just just as you see?
Do you drink a Zinfandel today, or do you drink a rosé? Do you drink right? Do you have a Merlot, or do you take a Syrah? Right?
Yeah, but that
Look,
okay. I choose that. Or often, what do I eat? So
yeah, Käsekreiner or
currywurst.
Or currywurst, right? Look, I think we touched on this earlier on in the conversation, where at this level, I think that you have eliminated, oh, this is crap, this is great, this is mediocre, I don't really care for it.
No.
I think you've eliminated that, right?
Absolutely.
And so at this point, it becomes about flavors. It becomes about taste, right? That's why I brought the wine comparison in, right? So, what do I
I can tell you what I would do, Danny. If I have this multiple choices, I think I take a record and go with the record if I'm very interested in that record, and play it on all configurations, because the most interesting part for me is what are the differences when I use this configuration and this and this and this.
100%. To give you an example, great you brought that up. To give you an example, so I just got the
Danny,
I'll pull the link.
Go a little over to the left so we can see you better. Yeah, that's better. Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. A great example to give you is, so I just got, and I'll put a link in the box below. I just got, I think it's called Audiophile Classics Volume 2. It was recorded by the great René Laflamme, who is obviously an incredibly accomplished recording engineer. And he works with Nagra and uses Nagra equipment in all of his recordings. Wonderful guy. I really miss it. Sidebar, this freaking COVID thing. I miss seeing all my friends. You know what I mean? I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it, man.
Zoom doesn't help, or no, does not help always.
Seriously. So anyway, so René does incredible recordings. And you can get them on digital. And he started with Volume 1 a couple of years ago, kind of a compilation of 5, 6, 7 of his great recordings. And so now he came out with Volume 2. There's a recording on there. It was recorded in Montreal with one of their famous organs. And I apologize, I don't remember the name, which church it's in. 16 hertz note. And let me tell you, I'm not, again, not sidebar conversation, right? Oh, records don't have any bass. How can records sound good in the bass department? They don't have any dynamics. You got to play digital. Like, okay, listen, let me play you some records, and you're not going to ask me that question again, right? And so I put on this record, and I started with the big Kuzma and the Airline with the DSW2 cartridge. And Michael, let me tell you something. when that organ opens those 16 hertz pipes, the whole house shakes, literally.
I have lived in a house like that too. Yeah.
And here's what's funny. I heard a level of definition and rumble. And, look, first of all, 16 hertz, you can't hear it. You feel it, right? But you feel this rumble and you feel this definition and this punch in your gut. That's like, wow. And then I took the same record and I put it on my Thorens 124, which is a lovely turntable. Absolutely lovely turntable. You play some Frank Sinatra on here, some classical music, a small chamber orchestra or something, or chamber musicians. Beautiful sound, beautiful sound. I put this record on, and here's what happened. The bass, the feeling, it was all flubby.
Okay.
There was very little definition. It sounded like one, it sounded like Italian gelato mixed up together. Here you go, right? You lost the precision that you get with the big Kuzma. Okay. You lost the precision.
Okay.
Right? And then you put it on the Technix, and you get that precision back from the Kuzma.
Yeah.
But you lose a little bit of the weight, right? The it just doesn't have the cojones, right, at the bottom, the shove, to create that bass output that the Kuzma does.
Okay, and interesting, yeah, but I can feel what you say. Great explanation, like always, Danny, like always.
Well, I try. I'm sure that if this were scripted or whatever, I'd probably forgot half the things that I wanted to say. But
we always do, Danny. We always do.
That's right. That's right. Look, again, I think it's the pleasure and joy that I get out of this is that I can do those comparisons, right? Dream with Dean. Believe it or not, as I used in this example with the pipe organ, you put on Dream with Dean on the Technix, on the Thorens, the Kuzma, he's still Dean Martin, but he sounds a little different, And so, I think that's the ultimately, look, like I said before, some people prefer, if you're looking at wine, some people prefer watches, some people prefer cars. This is my hobby.
But what you have told us now, I think now everybody gets why you are, let's call it not in a negative way, semi-professional reviewer, because you love to review, you love to hear the differences, you want to work out.
I do.
Oh, okay. Now I get it.
I do.
I get it.
Yes.
Okay, Danny.
Professional reviewer.
But you don't live from it. That's what I wanted to tell.
Yeah. Right. No, fortunately, I'm blessed that I don't have to live from it.
Yeah.
Look, there's a lot of great reviewers out there, right? I mean, nothing to do with any of that.
Really? Name me one. I don't know any.
Yeah. We'll leave that for the next episode.
Yeah, I know that. I know. I just want to tease you because I am free. You are not that free.
Well, look.
No, we don't have.
One of my favorite reviewers that I like reading is Ken Kessler, right? He writes. He's got a how do I say it? Like a real world style of review, right? Anyway, not to get into the
let's stop that. So that was a little overview about parts of your equipment, Danny.
Parts,
so there will be other parts, I hope, I think.
Yes. Well, we haven't gotten into the second system yet.
And we haven't talked about speakers yet.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yep. We haven't talked about
Never
the big Wilsons.
never forget the speakers. We won't. We will talk about that.
We haven't talked about my tape machines either.
Oh, we have to do that also. So
Yes.
we have a lot to talk about, but for today, I really say thank you for inviting us and let us share your, in my opinion, at least, fantastic, beautiful, interesting system and your gorgeous insight, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's really a pleasure doing these videos with you. Thank you for the airtime. And you know, I gotta say, you have some amazing viewers and followers on your channel. You really do.
Great, huh?
I enjoy interacting with them in the
how much
comments.
discussions are there now? It's so beautiful to see. I love it when the viewers discuss with each other, and it gets more and more. That's so fulfilling if they do that. And if there is a discussion, you always have done it, and that's great. You will participate on the comments.
100%.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion.
I'm
assuming anyway about all this stuff. So we'll see.
Agree with him. Don't agree.
Yeah.
Fire. Don't make it too easy to him. Okay.
That's right. I will. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael.
Danny, thank you.
Ciao.
See you soon. Bye.
Servus. Bis zum nächsten Mal.